Have you looked at dairies and cows?
Sure.
As sources of the problem, but also opportunities for innovation and for technology?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways we could be managing our dairies to reduce their methane emissions. We've got research going on right now on different feeding regimes. So for example, I think I just saw a paper recently that feeding some sea kelp can reduce methane emissions by a fairly significant percentage. Now, don't quote me on that.
Right.
I read so many of these research papers. There's a lot of them, but that's the example
good.
of changing the feeding regime, changing up how we manage the dairies, things like how we manage the manure lagoons so that we're capturing that methane and turning it into a biofuel. There's a lot of that kind of research and actually implementation going on.
Interesting. Well, it's certainly in Tulare you have lots of cows.
Yes.
And so they will be very interested in the future for this area, and also attracting capital. Now, I'm in CalPERS, and so I would love to take my CD and invest it in something that I live in Sacramento now, that would help the region. Where should I go?
Well, right now, you probably don't have a good place to go with your retirement account.
Right.
See, the thing is, retirement accounts have some pretty strict oversight and laws.
Okay.
That's what makes them challenging, but it's also what makes them very attractive, because for the average citizen, if they have any savings, it's probably in a retirement account. And I think the last statistic I saw some time ago, over 98, maybe almost 99% of all of our retirement accounts are invested in Wall Street instruments.
Gracious.
Yeah. Now you can argue that some of that does come back to California, and it does. Certainly San Francisco, Silicon Valley, Los Angeles, San Diego, our big urban coastal centers, they get a lot of investment from Wall Street. But for the other 80+% of California, we're paying money in. That money is not coming back to our regions or our communities. This is our money taken elsewhere, and then our regions are starving for capital. So that's why we think it's so important to try to create these regional structures, so that, and we're not talking bringing it all home. That would be very risky as well. We were talking a few years ago about just trying to get citizens to bring 2 to maybe 5% of their retirement income home. And it's significant. I haven't calculated the numbers recently, but I know last time we did, utilizing 2010 numbers. And keep in mind, that was at the height of recession. So the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, the 6 counties that make that up, if in 2010 their citizens had brought home just 5% of their retirement accounts then, they would have had $2.7 billion to invest in those 6 counties. Yeah. It's right now, with the stock market up and the economy up, it's well over double that probably. So think about if those 6 counties had several $1 billion to invest in those counties. And we're seeing folks do that. I want to give a shout out to the elected county treasurer, I believe is her title, up in Placer County, whose name is going to escape me at the moment. But we've met with her. She has really found a way to invest county dollars into infrastructure and projects in her county and in her region.
Wow.
And actually, I know she's been talking to some of her colleagues. We've been talking to a lot of the county supervisors about that, and they are finding ways. RCRC actually has a financial authority that they do a great deal of investing in housing in rural areas, because that's a huge problem, is lack of housing, affordable housing.
Well, I would think that the Sacramento Council would be particularly interested because it is fairly large. It is close to the Silicon Valley, relatively close, and they certainly have the state government here, so they could be very influential.
They could.
What is the election process dampening their energy or enthusiasm?
No, I think I think when you look at a region like Sacramento, it's not quite as starving for capital as, say, your more rural regions. And also, with the economy picking up a bit, a whole lot of folks that were interested in this back in 2010, 2011 are getting a little complacent. The emergency isn't quite as bad as it was then. I think that has slowed down some interest. And also, I think that people have been finding some workarounds. You know, one of the things, just as an example here in California, direct public offerings, DPOs, have been growing like crazy. You used to never have DPOs. When we first looked at them back in 2010, there was a handful. Now they're happening all over the place. Little companies just trying to raise $1 million, $2 million can do a DPO. It's not that hard to do. So for some people, that's working. Others are using crowdfunding options. I mean, there's a lot of crowdfunding options out there. Others are finding lending clubs. They're identifying state programs, which is part of what our Access to Capital Guidebook was about, letting people know about these other programs, and people are starting to use them.
Are you going to be updating the Capital Guidebook?
We had a meeting here in December to look at it, to see what we needed to do. Most of it is still pretty viable. There's a couple programs that have had significant changes. The website, the web links need to be updated. Some are still valid, some aren't. I've got a graduate student researcher working on just updating those right now, and we'll just make sure they're published again and keep referring people to them. Yeah, actually, it's still pretty valid. We didn't see a lot of need to go in and do much work.
That's great.
Now, what we did see is we need to really look at the policy recommendations in there, because it does have some. So, for example, one of the programs that many people really liked was COIN, the California Organized Investment Network. And that's not functioning now. And some folks are wanting to look at, well, why isn't it and how could we get it functioning? There's a growing interest in making cooperatives more viable for different activities. And they're used for a lot of activities anyway. ESOPs, employee stock-owned programs. That's a very, very exciting opportunity, particularly now with a lot of turnover in small businesses, family farms, etc. If you own a small business or a family farm and you don't have your own kids that want to take it on, how do you get your equity out of it and yet still keep it as a viable business? And things like an ESOP are one way to do that.